All right, welcome back, friends, for another episode of Soar Higher. My name is Rob Johnson. I am not Joel Weiland. Joel has actually decided to move on from Wayne Media for other opportunities. He has taken all of Jason's fantastic advice and moved onward and upward. So I am guest hosting this week, and as always, the man behind the show, Jason Ballard, is with us. What's happening, Jason?
Hey, man. Good to see you, Rob. It's a privilege to be on with you. I've been excited, looking forward to this.
I have been too. I was telling you on the pre-show all weekend I've been thinking about this, and I always enjoy our conversations, but they've never been recorded, to your knowledge. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do this type of a platform. So one thing I did want to address is, we're obviously in a bit of a different recording studio. We're in a remote studio, and I think one of the benefits of shifting to that is obviously Soar Higher. Everything you're doing with the consulting firm is a global brand. You're not just tied down to the States. And the podcast shouldn't be either. So giving us this remote platform, I think, is going to do nothing but increase what you're already doing in your business and translate that into the podcast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys. Your folks do some great work at Speakeasy, and this just allows us to be more dynamic, touch the people that I'm out there touching anyway, and just get our information out there, get our resources out there, get all this good knowledge that we have from not only us on the shows, but more importantly our guests that are on the shows that are experts in these different areas of life that we talk about, so that people can gain this knowledge and do something with it and hopefully make life better for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously on today's topic, if the guests or if the listeners rather have already seen the title, we're talking about marketing for new businesses. Now, Jason, I'm curious, at Soar Higher, when you're going through and you're onboarding clients, what percentage would you say are in like the first 3 years of start? And then what percentage do you think are beyond that, if you had to guess?
I would say about a third of the folks that I'm working with are in we'll call them the earlier stages of startup. Here and there, certain ones are kind of haven't even really launched yet. I've helped some folks kind of get launched. They're working with various funding groups out there that may be funding their efforts or part of their efforts. And so I've taken people from nothing to kind of concept to launch to growth mode and success mode from people that are in their first couple of years. I even have many clients. I have a couple clients right now, especially local to Louisville, that have been in business for a long time, 10 plus years, but they're still operating. They never grew past a certain point, and they're still operating kind of like a business would around year 3, 4, and they just never really got out of that. They don't really have legitimate processes. They don't have some of their systems and things in place. They do a lot of things ad hoc and trial and error methods.
Yeah. No, I can understand that, and I know I'm in an interesting perspective as well. For the listeners who don't know me, so I'm Rob Johnson. I serve as the CEO of Wayne Media and Speakeasy Podcast Network, and we are in kind of our 4th year of operation. And we're in that unique boat of we are still in startup mode as well. And we also are a marketing agency, so creative house. And so a lot of the things we're talking about today are things we've done for hundreds of businesses and things that we continue to work on for ourselves. So it's a unique perspective I think we have for today's show.
This is going to be great. I'm excited to get your perspective because you're not only a younger company yourself, growing, doing great things. I see amazing things with you guys, but you're also in the marketing business of helping other people in these similar situations. So this is going to be a fun conversation, Rob.
I'm pumped. So let's dive into it. So the number one question that I get when I have a startup walk through the door is, where do I start? They want to think about, they want to do the best things from the beginning. They want to lead with their best foot forward. And what I think about in my head, at least, I'm curious for your perspective as well, is I think structure and infrastructure more so than advertising. So I think about
Yep.
building the base of the business. And then once all that's done, once the frame is built, once the roof is on the house, I'm taking this home analogy very far. Then we can start the interior design. We can start, putting the pillows on the couch, which I'm not a fan of. My wife digs, but we can do all that stuff. But if you don't have a structure, if you don't have that, guide, you're not going to have anything long term.
Yeah. Well, I'll even take it a step further, Rob. You're talking about a structure. Sometimes it takes a while to build structure. It depends
Sure.
on your definition of structure,
Yeah.
right? Structure can mean processes to some people. Structure could be, am I an LLC or an S Corp or an Inc. or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right? So I would I would say differently, not about structure. I would call it foundation.
Yeah. I like
You
that.
can't build anything, a house or a business or anything else without a strong footer, a strong foundation that's solid that can support whatever it is you're envisioning your business to be some point down the road. You have to think strategically about what that may be,
Mm.
and am I laying enough foundation down to be able to build upon that without having to rebuild it over and over again over the course of years. You get to year 2, 3, and I've seen people rebuild almost all over. Yeah, that didn't, that we got to here. Now we got to tear it down and build it up again because now we're going to do this, or now we're going to go this direction, right? I would always advise, young entrepreneurs that are starting a business or in the earlier stages of business to take time. They get so excited. They've got a great idea. They want to get it to the market as soon as possible before somebody else does, and they're passionate about it. But take extra time to think strategically about the size of the foundation you really need to lay, and is it in alignment with the vision of where you think this company can go.
Yeah. That's great advice. And, one of the things I wanted the listeners to gain out of this is sort of a checklist of things to walk through and make sure you have in place. So I want to get into the specifics for a minute. So for me, when I have a startup walk through my door and they say, hey, Rob, we need marketing, we need to get out there with the TikToks and the YouTubes and the Instagram and all that jazz. And generally, I will pull them back in and say, okay, before we do that, there's two things that I want to make sure we have in place. Do we have branding and identity squared away? And do we have some type of a digital platform that people can understand what you do without having to speak to you? And that usually comes across in the form of a website. So if you have your branding and identity, which would include your logo, any of your typography, basically the themes of your company. Are you more minimalistic? Are you a maximal company? Meaning do you tend to be more simplistic approach? Or are you much more, detailed with the write-ups? That's going to inform what the website looks like. So if you have all of those things in place and you have, your branding kit and your identity and you have the website built, those are two really essential components of, as you put it, the foundation of that business.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Once you've got the some foundational things level, you figured out, am I going to be an LLC, an incorporation, or whatever, and you do all those legal things you got to do to set that up and set it up correctly. Hopefully, working with an expert like a CPA or something.
Yeah.
People have to know you exist, right? I ran into this issue when I decided to open up a coaching business. I've been in a number of different businesses. Quite a few of those are more tech based, right? So people knew me, my brand, my personal brand was built around me as a senior executive, that lived around the world and oversaw different types of organizations, but a lot of that was tech oriented, right? Mm-hmm. So I was the tech CEO or a CIO or whatever. Jason equaled tech. I know the tech sector really, really well on an enterprise level or even in a smaller level, right? And I had to quote unquote rebrand myself to orient people that Jason doesn't equal tech anymore. Jason equals business and executive coach. New logo, new, taglines, as you kind of see behind me with my signage and stuff there in the home office. It I had to train people, family, friends, prior work colleagues on Jason equals business and executive coach. A lot of people don't even really understand what that is until I talk to them, but that was the first step is doing that. So the question is, well, what is that brand? What are the colors? What is the logo? What's the meaning behind the logo? My logo, while it looks pretty simple, there's a lot of depth to that. And you've got to think through that, because that drives the story for which people will associate them, you to them, and how they think about your business.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that kind of drives me bananas about some companies is they don't put that time in, because whether it wasn't explained to them or they just didn't value it, but then they're in year 4 or 5 and they're like, man, why aren't we gaining any traction? We don't have this referral network that we thought we were going to have. And a lot of it comes down to recognizing different brands in the market. Like, you might not need an attorney today, but if there's a really well-branded attorney, whether it's billboards or social media or whatever, and they do a really good job of putting themselves out there, when you need that particular service, it's much easier to recall people that have memorable branding. So to your point, you do have a lot of things going on in your logo, and it is, in my opinion, memorable, and you do have a really good tagline. So those things, if someone was in need of executive coaching, those would be things that would stand out. So there's a lot of value in putting money into on the logo and branding side as well as the website side. As a matter of fact, talking about money, as I was preparing for this, I decided to look up current trends for websites and how much they cost, because we're obviously a web house. And back when we first started, 2019 or so, a website for a small business was averaging between $7,500 and $9,500. So you split the difference, call it $85. Today, for a business that does under $2 million in sales that is looking for a website, so this would be a business in their first 5 years, the average cost is $19,000.
Wow.
And someone might see that and they're like, wow, $19,000, that's a lot to come up with. And you don't need to start with 19. But the point is, you need to think about how much business the website can generate you, because it is working for you while you're not working. That is one of the investments. And same with the brand. Is your brand out there working for you while you're not working? And those are two really key elements to this conversation on where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for the folks out there listening, don't let $19,000, for a website scare you, especially if you're starting off in the earlier stages of your business journey. $19,000 sounds like a lot of money. You don't have to start with $19,000. You can start with a few $1,000s and get the basic components there, a home page, a contact us page, and then build it slowly. That's what most people that I talk with and work with or end up doing, because it's, nobody's got all the answers to all of their questions for you to build a 400-page, website, right? They don't have all that thought out. You got to start and kind of build. But I think if you're either thinking about starting a business or you're in the earlier first couple of years of a business, I think the really big question that I would encourage you to think about is, on average, I'm going to give you a quote here, between 4,000 and 10,000 impressions are put in front of people every single day. Every day, we all are presented in some form or fashion thousands, between 4 and 10,000 impressions of something a day. Yeah. That's through social media, ads, Google, efforts. That's websites, that's billboards, radio, TV. If you really sat down and thought about all this stuff, it's around us everywhere you turn. Advertising, little ads, little click here to learn more things. Yeah. It is nuts, right? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in all of your mobile apps. It's everywhere. So the question you need to ask yourself, man, I've got this really cool product. I got this really cool service. How in the world am I going to break through 4,000 other things that the people we sell to are seeing every day? How do we break through that and become noticeable, become memorable, right? When I teach people about marketing and branding and positioning, you got to start with a marketing bridge. It's the psychology of how people buy, right? And so it's a 5-step process. Your goal is to take them from one side of the bridge to the other side of the bridge. One side of the bridge means you're unaware. People are unaware of you. They don't know you exist. They don't know what kind of business you do. Your uncle from 10 years ago you talked to still thinks you did what you did 10 years ago. They don't know what you're doing, right? A lot of people in the earlier stages of business, they just don't know about you. Right. They don't know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and so they're unaware. And so the name of the game is to make them aware. How do you make them aware? Your logo, your colors, your brand, your taglines, that foundation of marketing that you can build upon. That's what gets impressed into people's minds. So when they see your widget, they think instantly, when you think of a dark colored soda, you think of what, Rob?
So, a dark color? Yeah, I think Coke, right?
Coke.
It's always Coke.
When you think of a white, soft tissue to wipe your face, what are you thinking of?
Yeah, it's not tissue paper, it's Kleenex.
Kleenex, right? That's how you need to think about your marketing, right? How do you become a household brand? They need to be aware of you, right? So consistency and frequency with your marketing are critical. Once they become aware, the third stage is conviction. That's when it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when people need you. And when they need you, you're the person that's top of mind for that thing. When that happens, then they're able to move to action. Then you can actually sell them something, and then they're on the other side of the bridge as a client.
Love that. I love that. And everything is a progression. And I think all too often business owners get in this position where, they kind of have this, I call it the Veruca Salt mentality of I want it now, and they get to this, and I understand it. Like, I understand the hunger and the drive. And I've been in that exact same position of like, hey, I want this thing to take off now. I'm ready. But there's a process to everything. And if you're not thinking about the process, if you're not thinking about, the steps logically that's going to take to get there, you're going to forego all of that just in the name of, whatever the quickest business that's going to come through the door first is going to matter rather than, working on the structure. So when I consult on the marketing side of the house, it's always usually branding and web, and then digital assets, which would be photo or video, and then transitioning into social media, and then looking at print or some other form as well. So that's the formula. And granted, all companies don't fit into that mix. Not all companies need all of those things. But that's the typical path I walk people down. And then the question gets into budget. So how much money should a company allocate towards marketing? And in my experience, and the research seems to indicate this as well, if you're a B2C company, meaning you're selling a product to a consumer, your marketing budget's going to be higher because the customer acquisition cost, because exactly what you said, Jason, 10,000 impressions a day, the cost to acquire and break through and capture a person to become a consumer of whatever product you have is much more expensive than for me to capture the attention of a business. So typically,
Yep.
B2C companies will spend about 10% of their annual operating budget on marketing, and that's an average. Whereas a B2B company like myself, where I'm advertising to businesses, I will spend about half of that, about 5% of my budget would be allocated towards marketing and advertising. That's the average. Again, just like with the website, it could be less, it could be more, but that's what we're seeing right now for the data and the averages, and everything that I've worked on seems to back that up as well.
Yeah. Now, that seems to be in line with what I'm seeing in the research that I've studied as well. Because B2C it's a volume game, right? You're selling a can of Coke, or you're selling a wrench at Advanced Auto Parts or something, right? You gotta sell a lot of those things to really make your money back. So you have to put a lot of skin in the game especially up front in the beginning, right? I know
Absolutely.
of another marketing company, and they sell a lot of we'll call it marketing collateral, like coffee cups and squeezy stress balls and T-shirts and those kind of things with your branded
Sure.
logos and stuff on it. And it's a high volume game. It's a high volume game. Whereas if you're more B2B, the sales cycle's usually a little bit longer, but it pays off greater dividends in the long run.
Yeah. No, as far as I know, no business owner is impulse buying marketing services, whereas with with the B2C company, you drop me a really good Facebook ad, and all of a sudden, I'm a Dr. Squatch customer now, because they have great commercials. So, that's the difference is, like you said, the sales cycle on B2B is longer, but when you have that machine rolling, you don't have to worry about the acquisition costs skyrocketing because of another platform taking away attention, or
Right.
and that's what's interesting to me is business owners sitting down and thinking about that. And that's kind of the two roads that I walk people down. Is one is, are we going to be doing any innovation? Are you doing something different than what your competitors are doing? Or are we going to be doing some replication and actually working on in the same environment and playing in the same sandbox that they're in? And I've seen both methods be effective, but basically
Yep.
it's when you're coming into the market, are you going to not copy and paste, but are you going to just be in the same places, the same Facebook, Google ads, all that jazz? Or are you going to innovate and do something different? Like, no HVAC company in my area is on TikTok. I'm going hard in the paint on TikTok. I think it's going to work. So that would be an example of an innovation where you're doing something different than the market. And you have to, it has to be it's calculated risk. You have to think about which one's
Yep.
going to be more effective.
Yeah. Well, I look at it similar but a little different.
Yeah.
And here's how I look at it. Are you going to be innovative, but not just different, but innovative is in breakthrough? Are you going to be
Right.
disruptive, right?
Exactly.
Are you going to penetrate the market? We'll use Tesla as an example, right? Tesla broke into the long-standing automotive industry and completely disrupted it. I mean, turned it over on its heels
Yeah.
to where it actually became a leading company, the future of cars, to which everybody else started following. Right? You're either leading in the industry, you're following in the industry, or you're kind of in a niche market, right? And so it's interesting that big companies like Ford, GM, and Chrysler, they're following in the footsteps of Elon Musk and Tesla. So are you innovative as in breaking through, disrupting things, or as you call it, replicate? You're another person that offers X in the world. Great. But if you can't go in and be different, if you can't add different value, it may not be disruptive like like a quote unquote innovative thing, but you have to be different, or why else do it? You'll never penetrate through because other people are way ahead of you and have brand recognition. So you have to deliver things faster. The service has to be different or better. Let's look at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Look at Chick-fil-A. How many fast food restaurants are already out there that sold a chicken sandwich? McDonald's was doing it, Burger King was doing it, Wendy's was doing it, Zaxby's, you got plenty of players in the field, but Chick-fil-A rolls in, sells, I don't want to say it's the same thing, but it's another chicken sandwich, another version
that's
of it,
blasphemy.
right?
If you say Chick-fil-A is the same thing.
No.
You gotta walk that back.
Well, I don't mean it's the same thing as like same quality, but it's a chicken sandwich, is a chicken sandwich is a chicken sandwich, but what
Sure.
makes them different? Where's that value? What makes them different and stand out? Because people can immediately, oh, it's another chicken sandwich on the market. Okay, great, just a different logo doing it. Well, no, they did it because of the taste. They did it primarily because of the service.
Right.
They dress differently, they act differently, talk differently, serve you in completely different ways that's memorable. And now, as far as chicken sandwich and chicken nuggets go, to me, are certainly a leader out there. Now you see McDonald's and some of these other groups changing up their chicken menus to try to, catch up to, because they became the leader.
Yeah, that's a great example, and that's an example how you can have a great product. You can drive that great product by not focusing necessarily on the product, but focusing on the processes behind it, which is the service. There's no other fast food industry or fast food company rather that I've seen that operates as well as Chick-fil-A. And I gotta imagine McDonald's executives are just smashing their head on the table, just like, all right, we need to replicate this, but this ship is already so far in this direction. It's very hard to turn, now that we've done this. So it's fascinating to me how much focusing on one thing that isn't necessarily what you're leading with can propel a company forward.
Yeah. Well, I think it was Mark Cuban, if I'm not mistaken. I saw him speak one time. You're either being disrupted or you're doing the disrupting.
Yep.
Which one do you want to be? Which one do you need to be? So depending on your product, if you're selling chicken sandwiches like the rest of them out there, how are you going to be like Chick-fil-A and break through and disrupt? How are you going to be like a Tesla? How are you going to be like, other groups out there? You've got to do it differently, better.
Yeah.
And I tell you the key, personalizing it to the client.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's, when we talk about, disrupting a marketplace, I was in that very same position of, I'm going to start another marketing company. I mean, Jason, how many marketing calls have you gotten from people that want to get you to the top page of Google? So that's why I try to stay away from that term and just call us a creative house. Because one of the disrupting things that we did was put a physical recording studio on the back of our creative studio and make them work together so people can record. And that was one of the ways that I wanted to stand out in the marketplace. From that way I could talk about the recording studio. They could come see something that was unique, different, no one in town has. And then we can talk about marketing as well. But that's what people have to think about, is what is that X factor. And trades, and the people in the trades have it very difficult because they have to have time in market because their biggest X factor is their service and reputation. And that's a very difficult thing to articulate from moment one. That's something that has to be proven over time, because you can say best service, top quality, top shelf, people, yada, yada. But people need to also see that and prove that out in the marketplace as well. So it's some of this has to do with time in market as well.
Yep. Yeah, you bet. And it's especially tough in the trades right now with the labor shortages and supply chain issues,
Oh, yeah.
I went to have my house, the trim of my house painted, and there was a group of people that are building a house next door to me, and I went over there and talked to them. Hey, would you mind painting my house since you're here? And oh my gosh, 2 months later, and they couldn't even tell me when they were going to do it, how they were all over the map. I
Oh, wow.
completely lost confidence in them. Their lack of communication and follow up. I'd ping them 2-3 times. I'm like, all right, game over. I've lost confidence in you and your ability to convince me you're the right person. And oddly enough, as I was, talking to some different folks about that, I see a Facebook ad,
Yeah.
local, had great reviews, did an excellent job with their ads, did an excellent job with their marketing, and I clicked on it. I got a text from them within 10 minutes, had an appointment set up 5 minutes later. 2 days later, they're out, and 3 days later, they're on 20 feet in the air on a ladder, painting brown paint all over the side of my house. And they did an excellent job. They showed up on time every day.
That's
They
awesome.
communicated at the end of every day. Well, here's where we are. Here's what we're doing tomorrow. And they weren't loud, didn't play a bunch of crazy music, didn't cuss and rant and rave out in my front yard and, tick off all my neighbors. They delivered excellence. I was blown away. And again, that went into Google reviews. But you've got to think about how you can deliver consistently. I don't know about you. I want to get your opinion on this because you're the marketing guru in this conversation. The two things that seem to be the most important in marketing at any stage of a business, where you are in the business journey: consistency and frequency.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things, especially new businesses, mistake is they conflate those two things. Right? I think, they say, hey, you need to be consistent. And they're like, well, I can't post every day. And it's like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you need to be consistent with your approach, cadence. And as you get that down, then you increase the frequency of that. You do it more often, and then you'll see the results come in. But if you go too fast, and this is one of the things that I wanted to jump into, is if you go too fast and you say, hey, I just started, I'm going to be on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. I'm going to do all of these platforms simultaneously. Then after 2 months, you fizzle out. In 8 months, someone's going to get on that platform and be like, wow, this man hasn't posted since Thanksgiving. They're probably closed. Next. And they're going to move
Yep.
on. So if you don't have the consistency and the frequency, and I'll add a third one, just being able to sustain everything that you're doing in the operational side. If you can't do those things, I tell people all the time, it's much better to be off a platform than to be on one but not having posted for 8 months. Delete the account, come back to it when you're ready. But don't just sit idle on a platform, because people are going to think your business is closed even if it says open, but you're not doing anything on it.
No, that's great advice, man. That's really great advice. Everybody, especially in the earlier stages, are gung ho, ready to go. What do I need to do? And they're killing themselves, to try to keep up with all this stuff, working 80-hour weeks,
Yeah.
and they wear themselves out. The quality suffers, and a lot of their efforts are they're in vain because they confuse the buyers on, are they open or are they not open? Are they doing this now or doing that now?
Right.
It confuses them. And anytime a prospect sees your stuff and starts thinking, and they're trying to think about it and figure things out and try to understand if you're really serious or not, or if you are able to keep up and be consistent. That matters. It creates perception. Marketing equals perception.
Absolutely.
Perception allows people to buy or not buy. So whatever perception you're setting in somebody's mind that's their reality. It may not be your reality, but whatever the perception is, if you have really beautiful looking, LinkedIn posts and social media ads going on, and oh my God, this looks great. This is beautiful. It's awesome. I love the colors. I love the background. And then you show up 20 minutes late every time you meet people. You're going to confuse them. It's going to be a mismatch, and they're going to sniff you out as kind of trying to be somebody you're not yet.
Yeah, you got to have cohesion. And that's what I tell people all the time. And we can probably end on this point of talking about transparency and how important it is. I, from the beginning, will be always 100% transparent, whether it's revenue, whether it's our company size. I had a guy one time tell me, he's like, I got 8 employees. I don't want to put all 8 employees on the website. And I said, you don't have to do that. I said, just curious, why don't you want to do that? And he's like, well, I don't want people to know that we're small. And I said, well, when they meet you, won't they find out? And he's like, yeah, but he's like, I'd rather just save that for when they meet us. And I'm like, well, who cares? Like, who cares if you're small or big, how many people you have? Like, to me, that's always been the interesting thing. Like, I had a movie producer just cold call me out of nowhere from California. She wanted us to run social media content leading up to her film. I have no idea how she got my number, right? And she called me and she's like, how many people do you have working for you? And I said, and this was early on. I was like, well, we have 4, me and 3 others. And she's like, oh, she's like, I can't work with an agency that small. And I was like, that's totally fine. I said, I just don't want to sit here and lie to you and say we're much bigger than we are. So I know we can handle what you want, but I also understand you needing a bigger, more established company too. And if I would have lied to her and said, oh, we got 40 people and we're 50% through the project, like, it just wouldn't have worked out. Yep. So as transparent as you can be, do it. Because there's no negative side effects. Oh, someone doesn't want to work with you because of that? Good. They wouldn't have wanted to work with you when they found that out halfway into the project or halfway into the contract or whatever it is. So for us, like, everything from pricing to the number of people we have to, our portfolio work to everything being in-house, like, all of that was important to me to put out there so people know what they're getting. Also, yep. it qualifies clients before they even come in the door. They already know the details. That's right. And you're the same way. You have a ton of information on your website about your process, what you do. And I'm just curious, like, how do you approach transparency and getting businesses to open up more? And we can end on this note.
Yeah. Now, that's a great question. You have to be honest. You have to be transparent. People say, well, people always are, presenting themselves bigger than what they are. Their website looks a certain way, but they're only a certain size company. Yeah, that's okay, because you're showcasing all the different things you may do in different ways, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be transparent for a number of reasons. One, because the number one reason why people buy from you is because of how they perceive you and the quality, trust equals quality in people's minds, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you seem shady or you're going to bait and switch or you're trying to do something here and then when they meet you and talk with you, you're over here in a different conversation, talking in different ways, trying to schmooze people. People are smart. They have access to mobile phones. They do research before they even talk to you, right. Whether you believe it or not. And so just be genuine, be authentic. If people do not choose to do business with you because of that, then they're probably not an ideal client for you anyway. That helps you, especially early on, figure out the right types of clients. Either people like you, they get you, and they feel confident in you that no matter what happens, you or can deliver the things they want you to deliver when they need to deliver, and you're a good quality fit for each other, a good team for each other. That's what you want. And so your marketing should, if you do it right, as you said, help vet people, help funnel the right people to you, because you'll end up wasting 85-90% of your time talking to the wrong people that never will work out, and you've missed opportunities with the right people.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely love it. And that's something I always think about is, when you have a bad client, how much time you spent on that bad client and how you could have gotten maybe 3 good ones with all that time you poured into something that you probably shouldn't have been into in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Excellent, Jason. Well, hey, man, I loved this conversation, and the listeners are in for an excellent treat because next week we're going to do this again. We're going to shift our focus a little bit, still staying on the marketing topics, but we'll leave that for next week. Any final thoughts before we wrap up today, my friend?
Oh man, appreciate you. You guys are killing it. I personally use Wayne Media and obviously Speakeasy to host the podcast, and it's just phenomenal. I get a lot of great feedback on it. You guys do a great job, but they do my marketing. And it took me on just from a personal testimonial standpoint, it took me a while to find the right people. I had worked with a couple different groups before I had decided to work with you guys, and it is a journey, and it is some growing pains. But one thing that I felt really confident about with you guys is one, you, Rob. You're just a down-to-earth, genuine guy. Tell it like it is, just very sincere. But you're an expert. You're very, very knowledgeable in this space and all the things that you guys have done to build my brand and other people and their marketing and their brands together that I know out there in the world that you do things for. It's just top class. Whatever you guys do, it's just top notch. You put a lot of quality and thought into it. You're very strategic about how you do it, and you hire really good people. So those are the types of things, if you're out there listening, if you're thinking about marketing and who to work with, those are the types of kind of values and principles that I would, encourage you to use in your decision making. And again, if you're struggling with that, you can obviously reach out to me at any point. I can help ask the right questions for you to help you make sure you find the right people. That's what this podcast is about. You can feel free to reach out to us and contact us via the show notes, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, something that's really important is just creating that dialogue. Like, this is not meant to be, even though you and I are speaking to each other, this is not meant to be a monologue where we're talking to people. We want to be talking with people because
Yep.
there's a ton of different perspectives that influence a ton of different educational opportunities for even us, having been doing this for some time, and you've been doing it far longer than I have. But there's you're never going to be too old to learn or understand a different perspective from someone else. So I'm excited. I really appreciate the kind words as well about our agency. All credit to my team. They're first class people. So
Yes, sir. They sure are. So yeah, Rob, thanks, man. It's been another great show. Hope the listeners got some great stuff out of it today.
Absolutely. All right, my friends. Well, that is going to wrap up this week's podcast. Appreciate y'all listening. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and we will see you there. Take care.